Adding these little dots brings like a vibrancy to my painting. It kind of expands the brightness of the color so it's not so dull without losing some of that realism that I want to keep. It gives it a little bit of magic, but still makes it feel kind of grounded in the real world, real life magic. Baby girl, are you ready? Are you ready? Are you ready? I think she's ready. We're doing something very pretty today, a little like drone shot view of some ocean waves and some sand. Work on some sandy color. It's a very hard color to mix up, so we're gonna flex those sandy color mixing muscles. This painting is inspired by a photographer that I love so much called Adventures of Jess on Instagram. So I looked at a couple of her photos to make this one, and we're gonna make this onto our little board here. I've already got mixed up and put on my canvas a green color, and that's just so that I have some color to work on top of, so I'm not just using the white in the back, because then sometimes the white from the canvas shows through, and I don't want any of that. I want it to work on top of some colors. I'm also using a new little palette today. I took my palette paper and I taped it to a little board so it's not as big. What we're gonna do is we are going to mix up a color that's like a dark tealy green that's kind of similar to the color I have here, and then we're gonna slowly shift that color and blend it down until we're in our sand color. So what I'm gonna be using here is white, like a, what the heck do they call this? Aqua green, yellow, blue, magenta. I'll put the exact colors on the screen, but don't worry about it. They can be whatever you got going on. So we're gonna start by mixing up a color similar to this. I want it to be a little more teal, like a little leaning towards blue. So I'm gonna avoid this color at first actually, and I'm gonna get my dark blue, a little bit of that blue, and a little bit of yellow. I'm gonna mix up a teal to start. Something pretty dark, because we're starting way in the back here is where our dark water is going to be, and it's darker because it's deeper. And then as we move further down, we're getting closer to the shore, and the sand is going to be more visible. And then I'm going to add a little more of that light teal and some blue and a little bit of yellow. I want it to be pretty green, but not too green. So I'm going from that dark teal, adding a little more blue and yellow to get this greener color. Just mixing it slightly different each time. But now we're getting to the part where we need to get closer to a sand color. So to get that sand color, I've got my green here, and I'm gonna add a little bit of this magenta or red or whatever you got going on. It's also gonna darken it, so I'm gonna have to add some more of my white and yellow back in. You see how it's more of a brown color now? Take this here, add more white, more yellow, and a little bit more magenta to get closer to a brown color. So I want to get closer to a sandy color. So I think I'm going to take a bigger chunk of this magenta. Woo! And white. Yeah, we're getting closer to the sand there. Brown is a very tricky color to mix. It always is a little bit overwhelming sometimes. I think I'm going to put that on, and then we'll add some different layers to give the sand a little bit of texture down here before we go too much further. I'm going to mix up some more sand in maybe a slightly darker color and start tapping on some of this color. I'm using this tapping motion to create some texture in the sand, have some of that green still show through a little bit. And I think I'm going to leave this as is for right now. We're going to put our details on top, and then we can come back to the sand and kind of like shift the details and stuff as we move along. But for right now, what we're going to do is start drawing out our actual waves. What I'm going to do is mix up a lightish blue that has some of our green from our wave or water. And with this kind of light blue color, I'm going to add a little bit of water to it to get it to be pretty fluid. I'm going to draw out where our shoreline is. So I'm kind of using my little photo over here that I got to sketch out the shapes that I want. But really all you need is a little wiggly line right here at the like 1/3 mark. And then I need another set of waves that's crashing this way. So I'm going to do this just above, create another little wiggly line. I want it to have a whole different kind of wiggle. So what I'm going to do now that I have those sketched out is I want to add the foam on top of the water. So this is where the sand is, this is where the water starts, and the foam is going to kind of sit on top of the water in different spots here. You know what, before I do that, just real quick, I want a little more texture up here in my water. I'm going to go back to my color here, and I'm actually going to add a little more teal to it. This is the same color that I used to draw out our little lines here. I'm going to darken it just a little bit with a little bit of teal, a little bit of blue. And I'm going to start carefully drawing in some of this foam on top. And so the way I'm doing this is I'm leaving a couple open spaces so that you can still see the sand through, and I'm moving them in like wiggly lines towards the back, closer to the next wave. As I move up in the waves, I'm going to add less and less of these little foam wiggles. Because where the water's crashing here, right, getting closest to the shore, that's where the most foam is going to happen. And as we move further back towards the dark water, there's going to be less and less of that. Some of these little foam lines are really short, and some of them are kind of long, especially as I'm moving back here and making some of these a little bit on the longer side, like the motion of the wave is kind of stretching out the foam a little bit. Sometimes these little wiggles have branches that lead to other little lines. I just want to keep them having these kind of organic shapes. And I want them to be less and less, especially as we get farther from the little wave crashes. Less and less as we move back. All right, I want to get out a tiny brush because I want some of this foam to be little itty bitty dots. Tiny little specks of foam that are out there in the water too, like this. Got that? Really all we're going to do is add some white with our other little brush. And I'm adding a little bit of this blue too to give it a little bit of variety. So let's use this color we've got here and go back and redefine the edges of our water, those little parts where the wave is crashing onto the shore and where the different layers of water are kind of foaming and crashing on top of itself. Remember to keep them kind of lumpy and wiggly and organic. These are not perfect straight curved lines. That's not what the water looks like. It's got lots of lumpy bits. I'm not covering up all of the darker foam. So adding these highlights kind of gives the idea that it is an actual 3D object and that it's layered, that you're seeing through water, that the water is actually a surface stuff is sitting on top of and you're seeing through it like it's transparent. Moving farther up, and this is where foam's getting farther and farther apart, so I'm adding less and less of it. I'm going to move to my smaller brush, my little tiny detail brush, and just go in with more details. Hi, Beanie. You saying hi? Good girl. And now let's add one more highlight layer with our white. Maybe we'll do like a tiny, tiny little bit of pure white on top after we've done this. But this is the last big highlight layer for our water. It's just a little bit lighter. Just added white to our color here. And I really want to define foam once again. Okay, and instead of continuing with this bigger brush, I'm going to go straight to my little thin liner brush here for these details that I want to add. Just a little bit. I want to add a little bit of pure white only on the top of where the crashing parts of our wave are. Just so we define those a little bit more. I'm actually going to use my bigger brush for this because I want it to be a little bit wider. So now that's most of what our painting is, but I do want to add some lighter color to this sand here. I think it's still a little too dark for me. So I want to mix up a sandy kind of color. I'm using mostly my yellow and magenta, but I'm adding some of my teal in too. So I'm kind of going to have not a lot of paint on my brush and kind of just like dry, scrapey this color on and see how I feel about that. Just tapping on some different colors of sand. I kind of want to do a couple little like slightly lighter stripes on there too. So let's add a little bit of white, yellow, magenta, some different sandy textures going on here. Trying to keep it not too smooth. I want that texture to stay. So this is basically the finished painting. I'm going to push a couple little more things. I think I'm going to add a couple little highlights, and some of this water back here is still like a little bit too dark for me, so I want to add a couple more highlights in there and see what happens. But at this point, it's all up to you. You do whatever you feel like you need with this painting, and you can watch me finish up the rest of what I'm going to do for mine. Take this moment to make your painting unique to you. Maybe you add some sparkles on top of the water. Maybe you draw some little fish. Oh, that'd be so cute. Oh my God. That would be so cute. So I'm like undarkening a little bit of my background. I made it a little darker than I wanted after I finished everything, and I'm doing that by adding water to my paint and then kind of doing like kind of a glaze, so like a transparent layer of paint over some of the areas in the back that I feel like are just a little too dark. And then I'm going to go back and kind of re-add in my highlights that I covered up a little more than I wanted to. I'm going to do that by getting some white. I'm adding a couple little dots of teal like in the center. Like maybe there's light hitting it or reflecting off. I've been into colorful dots lately. That's been my thing currently. Really love a colorful dot. So I want to throw a couple of those in the mix. Look, I'm even adding this like super vibrant green. Whoa! This is me getting pretty experimental. You do not gotta go as crazy or as hard as me on these things. I'm going kind of wild here. I'm adding some little light blue dots on the edges of my little crashy parts of my wave. They're very subtle, but I think they're really fun looking. You can kind of barely tell they're there, but they add just a little something. Because I added those little dots on the water, I think I want some sand dots too. Just add some more color, and I think I want some like orangey sand dots. I'm mixing up kind of like an orangey. I'm going to be using the very, very tip of my little liner brush here. Adding these little dots brings like a vibrancy to my painting. It kind of expands the brightness of the color so it's not so dull without losing some of that realism that I want to keep. It gives it a little bit of magic, but still makes it feel kind of grounded in the real world. Really tiny. These are the tiniest little dots I could possibly get. If you don't have a paintbrush that's this tiny, like this, you can use a mechanical pencil and kind of sharpen the edge of the lead to a point and then tap that point in your paints and then tap it on. I've definitely used that technique when I'm drawing stars or other kind of really tiny little dots. If you're watching SpongeBob on the regular like I am, seasons 1 through 3 exclusively. You'll notice that the backgrounds, it's also very much artistic, had a very big artistic impression on me as a child, the SpongeBob backgrounds. But you'll notice that the sand is all kinds of different colors, and it's really cool and beautiful. Got some of those. I think I'm gonna lighten it too, add some white to this magenta and get like a lighter pink for my sand. Very SpongeBob. It's giving SpongeBob vibes. It's giving SpongeBob vibes. I really love this pink. This is looking really pretty. This is taking probably, all of these dots are taking more time than the rest of the painting, but you know what? This is what I really feel like is making my painting stand out and bring me that like excitement that the end of a painting brings you. So gee dang it, I'm gonna add as many little pink dots as I want. Literally in love. Okay, I want to warm up the sand a little bit more, so I'm going to add some yellow to this pink and bring back that orange that scared me too bad at the beginning, but now I'm feeling braver. You can see I'm not just like randomly tapping them, I'm kind of keeping them a little bit clustered and kind of keeping some motion to it too, like it's kind of angled this way. Okay, I'm gonna call that done. Oh my gosh, sparkly little dots. Look it, it's like a little rainbow of dots in there. I love it. Closer you get, the more color you see. Like if you back up, you kind of see like a general blue, green, sand kind of color, and then you get all close and you see yellows and pinks and reds and greens and all kinds of stuff. Look. That one's pretty cute. I like that one a lot. That one makes me feel really good. Oh, baby girl's so sleepy with her little tongue out. Did you see my painting? Do you want to see? What do you think? It's pretty cute, huh? This is our finished painting. I'd love to see what yours looks like if you followed along with this tutorial. If you tag me on Instagram or even YouTube, if you try this painting and post the video on YouTube, I'd love to see what you painted. Also, if you want to see the full version of this tutorial, not sped up, not cut, that just literally, that camera, just watching me paint every single little dot and brush stroke, that is a thank you that I give to my patrons who support me financially on Patreon. They send me a couple bucks a month and I let them see the whole thing, every single little brush stroke, the whole tutorial, which is like an hour and a half, 2 hours for this guy, something like that. There's monthly live streams that we do, there's access to all my reference photos that I've taken, there's all kinds of little rewards on Patreon, and it really, really helps me continue to do what I'm doing here. So if you want to support me there, mwah, 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 you make my dreams come true. If you have any questions about this painting or any requests for tutorials in the future, leave them in the comments below. I'll take a peek and see if I can answer your questions or make some of the paintings you want me to make. But for now, I'll see you in the next video.